Imagine scrolling through YouTube at 3 a.m. when you find it, a grainy video that looks like it was ripped from a 1980s educational tape. The narrator's voice is just slightly off, the music feels wrong, and there's something lurking in the static that makes your skin crawl. Welcome to analog horror, where childhood nostalgia becomes your worst nightmare. This isn't your typical horror with jump scares and gore. This is psychological terror that whispers through corrupted broadcasts, hides in emergency alerts, and turns familiar formats into instruments of dread. Welcome to the twisted world of analog horror, where nostalgia becomes nightmare, and the most terrifying monsters might just be wearing the face of Saturday morning television. Once you start watching, you become part of the story. Analog horror uses old-school media formats, VHS tapes, broadcast TV, lost educational videos, emergency alerts, and corporate training materials to tell stories of cosmic terror, government conspiracies, and reality collapse. Unlike traditional horror that relies on jump scares and gore, this genre creates a slow, crawling dread that maybe, just maybe, what you're watching is real. The screen flickers, messages appear scrambled, and something feels fundamentally wrong with the world being presented to you. This isn't your typical horror experience. There are no dramatic orchestral strings or obvious monster reveals. Instead, the terror builds through corrupted familiarity, taking formats we've been conditioned to trust and slowly revealing their sinister nature. It's horror that whispers rather than screams, and that's exactly what makes it so effective at getting under your skin. The origins of analog horror. Analog horror didn't emerge from Hollywood studios or big-budget productions. It crawled out of the dark corners of the internet like some digital parasite, feeding on our collective nostalgia for simpler times when television stations signed off at midnight and public access channels broadcast cooking shows filmed in someone's basement. This genre weaponizes the aesthetic of outdated technology, grainy VHS footage, emergency broadcast systems, corporate training videos, and local TV programming to create horror experiences that feel disturbingly authentic. The movement began gaining serious traction around 2017 when creators realized they could exploit our deep-seated trust in authoritative media formats. After all, who questions an emergency broadcast alert or a government-issued public service announcement? These formats carried inherent credibility, making them perfect vehicles for psychological horror. The genius lies in the subversion, taking something we associate with safety, information, and community service, then slowly corrupting it until reality itself feels unreliable. Chris Straub's Local 58 is widely credited as one of the founding pillars of the genre. What started as a parody of local television quickly evolved into something much darker. Straub understood that the most effective horror doesn't announce itself with dramatic music and obvious scares. Instead, it whispers through static, hides in the spaces between words, and makes you question whether what you're seeing is real or just a trick of tired eyes and flickering screens. The aesthetic choices weren't arbitrary. VHS artifacts, analog television interference, and low-resolution imagery serve multiple purposes beyond mere nostalgia. They create visual uncertainty. Is that shadow in the corner a compression artifact or something more sinister? The degraded quality forces viewers to lean in, squint, and actively participate in their own terror. When you can't quite make out what's lurking in those pixelated shadows, your imagination fills the gaps with something far worse than any special effect could achieve. Remy Abboud's Gemini Home Entertainment expanded the format by masquerading as nature documentaries and home videos. These weren't just creepy broadcasts. They were complete fictional universes with their own internal logic, mythology, and escalating sense of cosmic dread. The series transformed innocent camping trips and nature walks into encounters with parasitic entities and interdimensional threats, proving that analog horror could sustain complex narratives while maintaining its unsettling atmosphere. Then came Alex Keister's The Mandela Catalog, which took the concept to its psychological extreme. By incorporating biblical references, child safety warnings, and missing person reports, Keister created a world where reality itself was under siege. The series didn't just present monsters, it suggested that the very foundations of human perception and identity could be compromised, leaving viewers questioning not just what they were watching, but who they were watching it as. Why analog horror is so scary. What makes analog horror so uniquely terrifying isn't just its aesthetic choices. It's how those choices tap into primal fears about technology, authority, and reality itself. The genre emerged during a period of increasing digital saturation, when social media algorithms and deepfakes were making it harder to distinguish authentic content from manipulation. Analog horror exploits this uncertainty by presenting fictional content in formats we've been conditioned to trust implicit. The uncanny valley effect plays a crucial role here. These videos look almost right, but something is subtly wrong. The timing feels off. The authorities seem too calm during emergencies, or the educational content contains information that makes your skin crawl. It's the same discomfort you might feel watching a deepfake video of a politician. Your brain recognizes the format as legitimate while simultaneously detecting signs that something is fundamentally wrong. Analog horror also exploits what psychologists call the availability heuristic, our tendency to judge the likelihood of events based on how easily we can remember similar examples. Because these videos mimic formats we've seen thousands of times in legitimate contexts, our brains initially process them as real, even when the content becomes increasingly bizarre. By the time we recognize the deception, we're already emotionally invested in the horror. The genre's relationship with childhood trauma adds another layer of psychological complexity. Many analog horror series incorporate elements from children's programming, educational films shown in schools, or safety videos designed to protect kids. These formats carry deep emotional associations with vulnerability, learning, and trust in adult authority figures. When analog horror corrupts these symbols of childhood security, it doesn't just create fear. It excavates buried anxieties about the adults who were supposed to protect us and the institutions we were taught to trust. The 4 most terrifying analog horror villains. 4. The moon, Local 58, represents the terror of cosmic indifference turned malevolent. In Straub's universe, Earth's natural satellite isn't just a celestial body. It's an active threat that can influence human behavior through direct observation. The Skywatching episode begins as a standard astronomy program before revealing that looking at the moon can fundamentally alter your consciousness. The horror lies not in what the moon does to its victims, but in the implication that this has been happening throughout human history, hidden in plain sight. The moon works as a perfect analog horror antagonist because it subverts something universally familiar and comforting. Humans have looked up at the moon for millennia, finding romance, wonder, and navigation in its gentle light. Local 58 transforms this relationship into something predatory, suggesting that the moon has been watching back all along, waiting for the right moment to make its move. The emergency broadcast format adds governmental authority to the warning, implying that official agencies know about the threat, but can only offer helpless advisories to avoid looking up. What makes the moon particularly insidious is its inevitability. You can avoid abandoned houses, stay away from dark forests, or refuse to investigate strange noises, but you cannot avoid the sky. The moon will rise whether you want it to or not, and in Local 58's universe, that simple astronomical fact becomes a source of existential dread. The entity doesn't need to chase you, manipulate you, or even communicate with you directly. It just needs to exist, and eventually you will see it. 3. The Nature Tapes. Creatures, Gemini Home Entertainment. The Nature's Mockery and Deep Root Disease from Gemini Home Entertainment transform the natural world into a hostile, parasitic environment where nothing is what it seems. Remy Obode's creatures don't announce themselves with roars or dramatic reveals. Instead, they mimic natural phenomena so perfectly that their artificial nature only becomes apparent through careful observation and mounting dread. Nature's Mockery entities appear as ordinary plants and trees until you notice their subtle wrongness. Movements that don't match wind patterns, growth that defies botanical logic, or the way they seem to watch and respond to human presence. The Deep Root Disease takes this concept further, presenting what appears to be a fungal infection that actually represents the early stages of an interdimensional invasion. These aren't monsters in the traditional sense, they're ecological replacements, slowly converting Earth's biosphere into something alien and hostile. The genius of Gemini Home Entertainment lies in its patient world building. Each tape reveals another piece of the invasion, suggesting that humanity's understanding of nature itself has been compromised. Are those really birds in the trees, or something else wearing bird shapes? Is that hiking trail actually safe, or has it been converted into a feeding ground for entities that exist partially outside our reality? The series transforms every outdoor experience into a potential encounter with the unknown, making viewers suspicious of the natural world itself. 2. The alternates from the Mandela catalog represent the ultimate violation of human identity and perception. Alex Kister's creations don't just kill their victims, they replace them, steal their faces, and use their appearance to spread psychological terror throughout their communities. The alternates are shapeshifters, but their true power lies not in physical transformation, but in their ability to induce metaphysical awareness disorder, a condition that causes victims to lose their grip on reality and eventually take their own lives. What makes the alternates particularly terrifying is their relationship with religious imagery and childhood innocence. The series presents them as biblical entities, fallen angels or demons, that have been manipulating human history from the shadows. They infiltrate maternity wards, replace newborn children, and grow up wearing stolen faces while their true nature remains hidden. The horror isn't just that they exist, but that they've always existed, hiding among us, wearing the faces of people we love and trust. The alternates represent a uniquely modern fear, the terror of authentic identity in an age of digital manipulation and social media performance. In a world where people can completely alter their appearance through filters and deepfakes, the idea of entities that can perfectly mimic human faces feels disturbingly plausible. The series suggests that the line between authentic and artificial human expression has already been crossed, and we might not be able to tell the difference anymore. 1. The viewer as the ultimate villain represents analog horror's most sophisticated psychological trick. Many series in the genre break the fourth wall by suggesting that the act of watching itself is dangerous, that consuming this content makes you complicit in whatever horror is unfolding on screen. This isn't just a metatextual gimmick, it's a fundamental recognition that horror requires participation from its audience. In analog horror, viewers aren't passive observers, but active participants in their own terror. By choosing to watch these videos, we become part of their fictional universe. The camera might be recording us as much as we're watching it. The signals might be two-way communications. The warnings about not looking at the moon or avoiding certain areas become personal advisories, directed specifically at us, sitting in our real rooms, looking at our real screens. This concept reaches its logical extreme in series like The Walton Files or The Backrooms Found Footage, where the act of observation itself appears to attract the attention of hostile entities. The videos suggest that some knowledge is too dangerous to possess, that witnessing certain events can mark you for supernatural attention, and that the internet itself might be a feeding ground for entities that exist in the spaces between digital and physical reality. The view as villain concept works because it eliminates the psychological safety net that usually protects us during horror experiences. When you're watching a traditional horror movie, you know you're safe in your theater seat or living room. Analog horror deliberately erodes that safety by suggesting that the horror can reach through the screen, that watching is participating, and that you might already be part of the story without realizing it. The cultural impact and future of analog dread. Analog horror has evolved far beyond its humble YouTube origins to become a legitimate artistic movement that influences mainstream horror production. Major studios have begun incorporating analog aesthetics into their projects, recognizing the unique psychological impact of corrupted nostalgia and technological uncanniness. The genre has spawned thousands of imitators, spawned ARGs, alternate reality games that blur the line between fiction and reality, and created communities of creators who push the boundaries of what's possible within the format's constraints. The success of analog horror reflects broader cultural anxieties about information authenticity, technological dependence, and institutional trust. In an era of fake news, deep fakes, and social media manipulation, the genre's core premise, that authoritative media formats can be corrupted and weaponized, feels disturbingly relevant. These videos tap into contemporary fears about living in a post-truth society where reality itself has become negotiable. As the genre continues to evolve, creators are finding new ways to exploit emerging technologies and formats. Some are experimenting with AI-generated content, creating videos that appear to be produced by artificial intelligences that have gone wrong or been corrupted. Others are incorporating interactive elements, allowing viewers to make choices that affect the narrative outcome, further blurring the line between observer and participant. The future of analog horror lies not just in its ability to scare, but in its potential to comment on our relationship with technology, media, and reality itself. As our world becomes increasingly digital and mediated, the genre's exploration of corrupted information and unreliable narration becomes more relevant than ever. The static might be clearing, but what's emerging from the interference is far more disturbing than anything we could have imagined. So the next time you're browsing late at night and stumble across an old-looking video with terrible audio quality and grainy visuals, remember, sometimes the most dangerous signals are the ones that look exactly like the harmless content we've been trained to trust. And sometimes, the real horror isn't what's hiding in those pixelated shadows. It's the realization that you've already seen too much, learned too much, and become part of a story that was never meant for human eye. The tape is still rolling, the signal is still broadcasting, and somewhere, in the space between channels, something is watching you watch back. Hey guys, if this deep dive into analog horror got your heart racing, smash that like button to show some love. Don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling content, hit share to freak out your friends, they'll thank you later, and ring that notification bell so you never miss when we drop out next content.